Welcome to the EXCELcast. My name is Mark Clegg. I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship and Career Services here at the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance. I'm here with Delroy Lindo, an actor, director, you've really been involved sort of in every aspect of theater, film, and television really over the last 4 decades.
Yes. 4 decades, that makes me seem really old. I was 2 when I started.
Well, you started in the late 1 decade, and we're not even finished with this one, so it did turn out to be 4.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. So we're approaching graduation season here at the School of Music. We have a bunch of actors and theater majors about to head off into their careers. I'm just wondering, what do you think they should be doing sort of in those first months or that first year out of school to try to establish themselves in the theatrical world?
Okay. So my answer, there are a couple of answers I have to that question. What do they want? What do they want? I had a question from a young lady in the session that I just did, and she was speaking about being non-union. And I said that I thought it's not necessarily a bad thing to be non-union. One should concentrate on just working, getting work. When you join the union, you are almost immediately you're restricted, as you can't do any non-union work. So depending on how much you want to work, becoming a member of a union is not necessarily the thing that one should be looking to do necessarily. Depending on how the students want to pursue their careers, there is a very fundamental question, which is, where do I want to be pursuing my career? Do you want to be in New York, which obviously is a theater town? Do you want to be in Los Angeles, which is a film and television town? Do I want to be in a place like Chicago that has a vibrant theater scene, but less so than New York? So,
but maybe less competition, or no?
Less competition, less. Perhaps, because it's a smaller scene, perhaps less angst, less anxiety. So depending on what you want to do, the students should be asking themselves the questions, what do I want to do and how do I want to do it? Because how they will be responded to will very much depend on the environments that they place themselves in, whether that be Chicago, Los Angeles, New York. The other thing that they have, all of these students have going for them, is that the world has opened up digitally. And so in terms of marketing oneself, for instance, there is that avenue that's open to these kids, which was not open to me when I was starting, right?
No, so you're a director, you're doing casting, right?
Yes.
Berkeley Repertory and other
I
places?
have worked at Berkeley Rep.
So when you're doing casting, how do you go to the internet? Do you look at? All right.
But wait a minute.
Maybe we'll cut this part out of the video.
No, don't cut it out. Don't cut it out, because there are lots of people who do. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a really good example. A friend of mine just did a Jim Jarmusch film. You know who Jim Jarmusch is?
I don't, actually.
Oh, wow. Down by Law.
Okay.
Oh, my God. Okay, anybody who's watching this, just look up Jim Jarmusch. He's an independent, he's based in New York, independent film director. And he's done a lot of films. Down by Law is probably one of his most well-known films. This friend of mine was cast in that film with Jim Jarmusch because Jim Jarmusch, the director, saw on the internet a clip of a theater project that this friend of mine and I had worked on together. It's about Charles Mingus. And Jim Jarmusch, who's a big music buff, saw this clip of my friend Barry Shabaka Henley is his name, and contacted him about being in his film.
So you want to have an online presence, but the quality's got to be there, right?
The quality's got to be there, but I wasn't even saying that. I was saying for these kids to explore how they can use the internet to their advantage. I am one person. I happen not to use the internet in that way, but the fact of the matter is lots of people do.
Got it.
So the bottom line answer to the question is utilize whatever means you have available, utilize those things. But understand, you talked about quality. Understand that in the final analysis, as far as I am concerned, it's all about quality. So you have to be able to, if you're going to come up with a really clever, something that very cleverly gives you a presence on the internet, make sure that whatever it is that you're selling, whether you're an actor, a director, whatever it is, that you have the quality to go along with that.
Mm-hmm. So you yourself started in New York, right?
Yes, I did.
In the theater, sort of Broadway plays, Raising the Sun, Joe Turner, Come and Gone.
Yeah. So look, I did start in New York, and yes, I worked on Broadway twice during a 10-year span. But the bread and butter of my career was basically working as a regional theater actor. Mm-hmm. I was based in New York, and I would go out of town frequently to work in theaters that were in places like Norfolk, Virginia, Milwaukee. I worked at Milwaukee Rep. I went up to Yale a couple of times in New Haven. Mm-hmm.
So part of it's quantity. I mean, it's getting yourself out there, but gaining experience. So obviously when you're in school, you've got a theater, you've got classes, you've got shows and productions you're doing as part of school. When you get out, then you really have to cultivate those experiences so that you continue to grow.
Absolutely, and that's critical. And that's part of the reason I was saying to this young lady, don't rush necessarily to join the union, because as far as I'm concerned, it is about gaining that working experience. Whoever will offer you a job, whoever's prepared to offer you a job, if it's something that you want to do creatively, do it, no matter where it happens.
So what did you decide, what helped you decide whether to say yes or no to an opportunity that came to you at that stage in your career?
At that stage, well, you're talking about the beginning of my career.
Mm-hmm, yep.
Okay. I wanted to work. And so if there was any part that I felt I could do something with, I usually took it. Mm. Now, did I think in terms of big parts or small parts? Yes, I did. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't. Yes, I did. But I'll give you an example. My first job after leaving the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, my very first job was understudying at the New York Shakespeare Festival in a production of a play called Spell Number 7. I understudied. I went on, I eventually did go on, but when I was hired to understudy.
Right, so you might not go on stage at all.
I might not ever get on stage. But it was enough that I was being paid as an actor, and that I got to be around the environment. Mm-hmm. It happened for me that I did get to go on. So I made my off-Broadway debut. But the point was, I got hired. Even though it was not the most ideal, I got hired and I was being paid as an actor.
And did some of the contacts or that experience, did that pay off later on for you? Or do you think it was just the experience of getting
No. In that sense, there's a story. Okay, what ended up happening was I left that job because I was offered another job. And the casting person at the New York Shakespeare Festival at the time was very upset with me that I left. But the reason that I left, I was no longer going to be an understudy, but I was now going, I went to the Denver Center Theater Company, their inaugural season, the winter of 1979, 80, because I was offered 2 parts. I got to go on stage and work every night. And again, the parts were not fantastic, but I was being paid to go and work and be on stage and start gaining that on-stage experience. Right. So I guess the moral of the story is work as much as you can. You asked me what causes me not to take a part. I don't recall early on in my career saying no very often. The instances in which I have said no usually involved parts that I felt were either demeaning, parts that were not sufficiently fleshed out. But I have to say, the instances in which I've said no have happened later on in my career.
Mm-hmm. You had more ability to pick and choose as you got more opportunities.
That's correct. That's correct.
So how does a young actor sort of continue to grow? I mean, obviously when you're in school, you have teachers, you have coaches, you have people responsible for giving you feedback and sort of curating your development, coaching and mentoring you. Did you have mentors, or was it a lot of self-reflection, or how does a young actor continue to grow?
In my case, it was a lot of self-reflection, and the fact that I made a very clear choice for myself. I was going to go, as long as the work was interesting to me, I was going to go wherever I needed to go to work. Whoever would pay me to get on stage. And frankly, sometimes I wasn't being paid. I got my first agent in New York as a result of doing, I don't know if they still do these things, but it was called a showcase. It was a showcase production, an equity showcase production. And it was a play called Les Blancs by Lorraine Hansberry. We literally made car fare. We were paid the subway fare. You made nothing. It was a really interesting part, a really interesting play, and I wanted to do it. And so I did this production in New York for no money whatsoever, but out of doing that, I got my first agent in New York. So my mantra to myself was, go where the work is.
Now, just speaking realistically, do a lot of actors end up having day jobs and other ways of keeping home and hearth together while they're also doing this? I mean, you can't pay the bill with your subway token, right?
Speaking realistically, yes.
Yeah.
I've driven cab, I've bussed tables, I've waited tables. In the early 1980s, when I was beginning my career, one of the things that I did that paid a pretty decent wage, and when I say decent, between $4.50 and $5 an hour. Telephone, I did a lot of telephone work.
Awesome.
The selling of medical products on the phone. I did a lot of that. I worked at for a very short time, I worked for an answering service. This is obviously pre-cell phones.
Right.
This is back in the days when actors all had answering services. I worked there for a while. But yeah, I'd done a little bit of everything.
No, that seems smart. And I think, it's important for students to realize that that's not indicative of failure. That's sort of the normal way of doing things for a lot of people.
It is absolutely not indicative of failure. Now, I want to ask you a question. Did you ask me that question because somehow the students have this sense that if they're not acting or acting immediately that they're failures? Because the fact of the matter is, it takes years to make an actor. It takes years to build a career. I would say one of the really important things to remind oneself constantly is to never confuse lack of opportunity with lack of talent. Just because you're not getting opportunities doesn't mean you're not talented necessarily, right? So I think being realistic, actors, performers should expect that they're going to have to work waiting tables or whatever the case may be to support themselves until their acting career gets more established, until they establish themselves.
Well, I asked the question because, it happens in I'm a music historian, so we tell the stories of, famous, influential artists, Beethoven, Mozart, people like that. But even, in the theater, Delroy Lindo, you got Cider House Rules, you have, all your work with Spike Lee and Crooklyn and Malcolm X and all of these shows you've done. And so a student is going to look to you as a model, but they're going to see the part that's at the top of the mountain, right? The stuff that you achieved, which is sort of a pinnacle of your career. They're not going to see the struggle to get up the side of the mountain, right? To sort of break through. And so I think sometimes when we look at our role models, we forget all of the hard work that it takes to be that overnight success, right?
Constant hard work, constant self-belief. Many really boring jobs that I did, that I had to do, that on the other side of the coin, I had this belief. So you've got to have this self-belief. And sometimes you have to have this self-belief against all odds. You have to have self-belief in the face of nobody else believing you. You have to have this self-belief in the face of everybody saying no. That's probably one of the strongest characteristics that any young actor has to have, and that is to develop the ability to hear no, because you will hear no in the vast majority of the time. And you have to have the ability to say yes to yourself and do whatever you need to do to keep following your career.
Did you have a moment of sort of, personal questioning where you heard no and you were wondering, is this it for me? Or did you have a kind of resilience that you didn't listen to that?
Interestingly, I've had is this it for me in the last 10 years, actually. Mm-hmm. At the beginning, I believed. Mm-hmm. I am one of these people, I believe I was put on this earth to act. Mm-hmm. And in a funny kind of way, I think that they're the only kinds of people who should act, the people who believe that they're put on the earth to act. And I say that because there's so much other crap. Can we say crap in a podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think most of the university students have heard that word at least.
All right, fair enough then. There's so much other crap that one has to put up with. If you don't have the ability to put up with the crap, you should get out. I had a belief. I have questioned things in the last 12 years, not because I don't believe I was put on the earth to act, not because I stopped believing that I've been put on the earth to act. I still believe that. But some of the parts that I was being offered, not some of the parts I wasn't offered, and you do question. One does question. It's human to question. What I have done in response to that was I've been forced to broaden myself. I went back to school. I got a couple of degrees. I started directing. I started writing a little bit. So it's okay to question. Everything is a process. Everything is a process. So you question yourself and you find out what the answer is. And you find out how resilient you are with the answer that you have. Mm-hmm. For me, I feel that were I to quit, which is just, it's anathema, but were I to quit, then those forces out there, I think that I don't know who they are, they've won somehow. And I'm better than that. I know I am. And for myself, I've had, even when things have been perhaps a little barren, something has always come through for me. Mm. I'm thinking of two instances when I was told, no, we're not the one that you want. But what sustained me was the fact that I knew I had done really good auditions for those jobs. One was a theater job in Florida many years ago, and the other was an audition that I did for LA Law, when LA Law had been on TV for a few seasons, and it was the first influx of new lawyers. Mm-hmm. And I did an audition in New York. I didn't get the part. I kind of sort of knew I wasn't going to get the part because I didn't feel like I had that TV look, but I did a really good audition. And that it made me feel, I felt good enough about what I had done that the fact was I wasn't destroyed when I didn't get the part. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to belief, self-belief.
Right. Maybe this is asking about you as a director as well, but what are the things that a young actor can do? Was it part preparation? Is it their kind of behavior in rehearsal? What are the things that help put a young actor on the path to success?
Prepare. Absolutely. And I just said this to some of the other kids in the other session that I just did. The fact that these kids have taken the time to come to school and engage a program such as this one, and they've trained. Know that for instance, for those who are perhaps going to Los Angeles, which I don't advocate, by the way, but for those who do, a lot of actors out there, but the actors who are trained are the ones who stand a better chance of having enduring careers.
So if you were a young actor, where would you go right now?
Myself, I'd go to New York.
You go to New York?
York, yes, hands down, I'd go to New York, because New York is so theater oriented. I'll say for myself, and I believe it's true for other actors, you will. What I wanted to do as a theater actor was be exposed to a range of parts, because I felt that would best train me and develop me as an actor. That's how I could best develop myself as an actor. And that's exactly what happened in my case. But I want to go back and answer the question that you asked me, which was, what should a young actor do as a director? What am I looking for? And actors who are prepared, when I have been in auditions, when I've been directing and I've been auditioning actors, I can tell who has looked at the material and who hasn't. I can tell. It's not rocket science. You can just tell in terms of how they present the material, how they approach the audition. So be prepared at all times. Also, never, ever, ever look down on the material. If you're doing an audition for a play, if you're doing an audition for a can of soup, if it's an audition for a commercial, take everything seriously. Take everything seriously, because that attention to the material and attention to detail may be the thing that distinguishes you from some of the other actors who are auditioning.
And when you say attention to detail, it's more than just a script, because I know you've done background research that led you to go to NYU and do a master's thesis, right?
Yes.
So some of it is historical research, the kind of thing that would be in my world, right?
Absolutely. And all of that has to do with preparation. When I started working in film, for instance, I would always do I would create a biography for the character that I was playing. And there was, not all the time, but frequently when I was working in film, I would create a biography, because, now I was fortunate in as much as, the first big film the first film that I did in which I was noticed was Malcolm X. I had source material. I had the autobiography of Malcolm X. Let's see.
You played West Indian
Archie.
Yeah.
But I'd read the book. I went back and read the book again before filming. It's a great book. Yeah. And then I created I filled in all the blanks. I created a biography, and I really went on that film. I created a biography that included everything I had done that day that led me to that bar. The opening scene, for those who have seen that film, it's my character, West Indian Archie, sitting with two friends in a bar. And I created a biography that included, it was up to and including everything that I had done from the moment I walked into, leading up to the moment that the camera discovered me sitting in there in that bar. Now, I haven't done that in all of the film work that I've done, but I have created a biography for many of the parts that I've played. And that, for me, has tended to make me feel much more prepared and much more in ownership of the work that I was doing.
Right. So as a director or an actor, you can tell when someone's prepared, even for the audition, if they've done that kind of work.
No question. And interestingly, and your young people can try this for themselves. When you're prepared, when you know you've done the work, that influences how you walk into the room. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're auditioning for a project, you're actually being auditioned from the moment you walk into the room. It's not just about reading the material. It's your carriage, how you introduce yourself to the director and the casting people. It's everything. And people are watching. So I know from personal experience that when an actor is prepared, it affects the various aspects of how they present themselves over and above how they actually interact with the material.
Right.
That may be why, one of the great books, An Actor Prepares, by Konstantin Stanislavski. The book is called An Actor Prepares. So the answer to your question, do everything you humanly can to be as prepared as possible, no matter what the material is. I want to say one other thing. For new actors in particular, frequently they will only get what are called sides, which are the actual scenes that they're auditioning. They won't get the full script. They'll just get a portion. Doesn't matter. Study that material as best as you can, as fully as you can. My own personal opinion is that it is not necessary to be off book, to have memorized. That's my own personal opinion. But study the material as fully as you can. And if there are elements that you can introduce, just in terms of your own creative process, that help the material, use those things. And these are not necessarily things that you will verbalize or articulate to the director or the casting people, but they may be things in terms of your internal process that influence how you say a given word, how you say a given line. All of that helps to pad out your performance or your audition.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I think this is amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing advice, and I really hope that some of our young actors take that to heart and that they see you in one of your upcoming shows.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thank you.